question that was asked was, what would a Polish plumber who was illegally in Britain, what would happen to him? And of course, that's a nonsense. The fact is this: since 2004, we've had an open door to 8 former communist countries, and now, of course, with Bulgaria and Romania, it's 10. And let me make this absolutely clear, for the avoidance of any doubt: as far as UKIP's concerned, anybody that has legally entered the country has the right to remain. We do not believe at all in retrospective legislation.
Why doesn't your candidate, the man you want to send to Parliament this week, why doesn't he understand that?
He does, and he was clear about it. And actually, as I say, the question he was asked was a false question. It implied that the Polish plumber was here illegally, when, of course, the Polish plumber is here legally.
I don't want to have an argument about words, but I am going to have to read the question to you. What would happen if we left the European Union? What would happen to the Polish plumber who lives in Rochester? Would he be able to stay? Would he have to go? Mr Reckless answers.
The answer is...
He's then told, forgive me, and I quote, if there's a Polish plumber who, for instance, has got a house, a family, got kids at the local school, are you going to deport him? It was a quote.
Well, the answer is no. And what
so
Mr.
I'll put it to you again. Why didn't Mr Reckless know the answer?
Because what Mr Reckless did was then talk about the complications of transitional arrangements, OK? And this is where this whole thing gets marred in confusion. And the reason is that when we do vote in a referendum to leave the European Union, and we invoke the article of the Lisbon Treaty, Article 50, that sets us off on a 2-year negotiation to leave the EU, part of that renegotiation will be what happens to people from Britain, you know, retired living on the Costa del Sol, and what happens to people from Warsaw working in London or Birmingham or wherever else it may be.
Now, I ask you a very clear question and you give a very clear answer. Your candidate, Mark Reckless, was asked exactly the same question and didn't give a clear answer, and he entertained the possibility of deportation.
I don't know, Mr Robinson, when you were last yourself involved in a 2-month by-election, which this has been, and actually when you're doing hustings after hustings after hustings, and question after question is being asked, asked. And actually what happens to candidates is they get into a mode where they start answering a question on the topic and not always on the specific wording of the question. Let me clarify with you now.
No, I want to ask you, see, you're running this man for Parliament.
As somebody who has led this party since the doors opened to open-door immigration from Eastern European countries, there is no confusion. Anybody who legally came to Britain will be allowed to remain.
Well, all the parties, as you say, are now talking about immigration. Do you regard that as something of a victory?
Believe you me, I have since 2004 been called all the names under the sun. I've been told it is even disreputable to debate immigration in these terms. And now I see the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, occasionally even the Lib Dems talking about it. And this by-election, which I would put to you, is the most important by-election that's been fought for over 30 years in Britain, is being fought on this issue. And I think what is really happening here, and the reason that Mr Reckless, over a minor confusion, is becoming a bit of a story, is actually UKIP is changing the agenda of British politics.
Last week you had to clarify your own views on the NHS. Today you've had to clarify your candidate's views on immigration. I'll put the question to you. Isn't it the case that you say what you think on camera, and when people notice and they don't like it, you say, we didn't really mean it at all?
I think that's absolutely monstrous. The NHS debate last week was a deliberate attempt by the Labour Party to confuse the public as to where we stood. We had a debate on the NHS to forge our policy. We now have a clear, stated, published policy, which is the National Health Service should be free at the point of delivery, but please allow us, if we can, to simplify the system and to get better value for money.
And that's a view yourself didn't hold 2 years ago, and you were shown on camera saying it. So I want to get your response to the General. Isn't the case that you sometimes say things, realise people don't like them, and then say, oh, no, it was all a confusion and misunderstanding, I didn't mean it at all?
It's about time the media, including the BBC, grew up and understood that parties, before they forge policies and publish them, have open debates and consider options that perhaps come out of left field. And that's exactly what we've done with the NHS. And yes, I've teased on lots of policy areas over the years. Let's think about things before we make our minds up. And that is a normal, natural, healthy process for political parties to do.